3, 2, 1. We should be.
Yeah, looks like we're live. Cool.
Alrighty, I think we're there.
Hello. You have to excuse me. I have got a little bit of a sniffle, so I'll try to minimize that.
Okay.
Can you tell if people are coming on?
Maybe just have a look. Maybe if anybody's joining us, you can just message us while I quickly check in the page. No, I don't know. I think you should just go, Jane.
Okay. Well, welcome to tonight's live. Well, we're actually going to be doing an interview. I've never interviewed Sharon before, so tonight we are going to get to know Sharon King a little bit better. She's usually the one asking the questions. And so tonight we thought maybe it was time for Sharon to just share a little bit more about herself. So we're gonna spend a little bit of time getting to know Sharon on a little bit of a deeper level, more about her work and the origins of that. And then we're going to get into a bit of a session around the subjects of abandonment and rejection, and how those as core beliefs can get lodged within us, within our energy field, within our body, our psyche, as a consequence of some of these birth traumas. So let's get to it. If you have any comments or questions, just pop them in the box. I can't see them. I'm going to be asking the questions, so I'll just keep rolling, and Sharon will see them. And if there's anything that she feels is something to bring up during the session, excuse me while I wipe my nose. Oh my God, we've had a change in the weather, and it always affects me. So Sharon will jump in and bring in any of those comments and questions as they come through. So feel free to just pop those in. So Sharon and I have been working together, creating a new paradigm for both of our work. We've created what we now call the Metaclear Technique. So we'll explain a bit more about that moving forward. So we wanted to kind of dive a little bit more into both of our backgrounds so that you get more of a feel and more comfortable with our knowledge and our experiences, and the kinds of experiences that we have been through that formed our expertise in these areas, if you like, because we both have these lived experiences that we've both specialized in. So Sharon, give us a bit of an overview, firstly, of your background. What kind of experiences have shaped your work? Maybe something, I mean, there's a lot of information out there in your books and in all of your videos and things. Perhaps share something of those experiences that might not be so well known, that, you know, it's a little bit closer to your heart, maybe. I know that all of it is close to your heart. But maybe something that not necessarily has been spoken much of in other stories that you've shared, if that's okay with you.
Oh, yes. Okay. Wasn't expecting that question. So there's quite a few experiences that I've not shared with people, just because they are pretty dark, pretty traumatic, and potentially quite triggering for people to hear those stories. Sometimes I share them in a training, depending on the questions that are asked and if it comes up as a really good example. I think the thing that I've never spoken about before, and what is seemingly, I guess what's coming up for me right now, if I was to be really honest, with everything that's going on in the world right now, the thing that is most hard for me to process and to deal with is what's happening to mothers and babies right now with
Yeah.
regards to the birthing practices that I'm hearing about, regards to the losses of babies due to the so-called how to call it, so-called, not the remedy, but the I'm trying to think of a non-triggering word for Facebook, maybe the yeah, the jab that everybody seems to be having right now. And I know that's very controversial, and I know there's not a lot of proof that's been spoken about out there. Living in this beautiful tropical island, I'm also seeing a lot of stray dogs, stray cats, some very unwell animals, and it's the vulnerable, it's the young, it's the beings on this planet that can't speak for themselves. So we're kind of like going straight in here. So just to pre-warn people, but you know, and of course, like everything is a reflection for ourselves.
Of course.
So when we see an animal being injured, or when we see a baby being injured, or a baby that's not being cared for how we would wish it to be cared for, then it touches something very deep within ourselves, and probably some very deep wounds that we have, where we haven't been listened to as a baby, or we have felt pain, pain and rejection even for who we are. And it's something as simple, simple but not simple, as mothers being so totally overwhelmed, potentially traumatized by their birth experience, never been a mother before in this lifetime, and not knowing how to deal with a crying baby. And I think every single one of us that's listening right now, either live or listening as a recording to this, I think we have that felt self sense of, oh yes, that happened to me. It's got to have happened to you, because even as you know, as human beings, we get overloaded, and we're not always as compassionate as and kind to another human being as we would normally be. And having gone through a birth trauma, or being a new mother, and having all those beliefs going around in your head is, I'm not good enough, I don't know how to do this, I've got this living, breathing thing here that doesn't come with an instruction manual, and maybe
completely dependent on you.
Completely dependent on you 24/7. I can only imagine the amount of stress that must bring to people, and joy. You know, there is the joy of having a baby, there is the love, there is the connection, but sometimes there isn't the love and connection, because that bonding and connection hasn't happened at birth, and then you start feeling there's something wrong with you, and it all gets a little bit dark and murky. So I think that's probably to be very vulnerable, and how I'm feeling right now is, if you want to trigger me, then and I've had so many women reaching out to me now, like the people that have trained for me, sending me messages from other women who, you know, don't know how to cope with what's going on right now. You know, people who are putting masks on babies, or that women are going into the delivery room and they're not allowed to have their partners with them, and they've got to wear a mask while they're trying to give birth. And you know, a lot of women are now going, yeah, I want a home birth, I'm not putting myself through all of that. So there's so much that is going on right now that is kind of, I don't know, some days it's kind of like bringing me down a little bit, and other days it's making me downright freaking feisty, and I want to get up and you know, do something about it. And I'm sure everybody listening can absolutely appreciate right now. So I think that's the bit that I haven't really spoken about, is that how when we see an animal or a child or a baby that's young, that's not able to express their feelings in verbally, if you like, the pre-verbal years, but you just know that you know, there's stuff going on for that being, because empathically you can feel it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I was going to kind of, you've already touched on the next question that I was going to lead into, which is how birth trauma work relates to the experiences that people are actually having right now, and what types of traumas are they being triggered back into. So, you know, for myself, I can imagine I've felt feelings of helplessness and overwhelm, and that sense of real, at times, real deep vulnerability, being at the mercy of powers that be, which, you know, is the position of a newborn child, isn't it? Yeah. Without that real connection to that, if that bonding doesn't come in very quickly, there's that lack of a sense of safety and security, which is, you know, what many people are feeling on the planet right now. So I wanted to kind of bring that kind of likeness, that comparison to that fresh new being in the world, having, you know, complete dependency, which many of us have complete dependency on the systems that have been created around us, and we're now getting a sense that to some degree, wherever you are in the world, to some greater or lesser degree, has been threatened. So I perhaps wanted to maybe, you know, talk to that a little bit, and some of those deep beliefs that are being triggered right now that are in some way connected to the outer events, but are more relevant to that pre-birth or birth experience.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like whenever we do things like that, it's stuff just comes to us like an hour or 2 hours or a day or something before we do this. So, you know, this is so fresh information. So when we're born, we come in potentially, as long as we've had a relatively okay time in utero and a not too traumatic time getting here, like we haven't experienced a really big event like we've nearly died, is when we come here, we have the familiar sound of mum and her energy. We have the familiar sound of dad and his energy, because we get to know that while we're in utero. And to be with that person straight off from birth gives us that level of security, and we start to relax, we start to feel safer, and we start to, as the days go on, we start to rely on that parent, if you like, to be there for us and to take care of us. And you know, if we're hungry, then that person will come when we cry because we're hungry, or we got pain in our tummy, that person will come. And it's fascinating because I'm observing not only other people but myself going through different levels of trauma right now. And what almost like one of the biggest traumas for people is those people that we do put trust in, and then they do something or say something that makes us go, what do you mean? Like that doesn't fit with what I believe or what I'm learning. And you know, so many people are again, it's back to the jab, if you like. So many people that we have looked up to, and our belief system is that, you know, we don't want it, we don't feel that it's safe for us. But those people who we've looked up to are now going, yeah, rah, 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 bring it on.
Yeah.
And it rocks our world, right? So we and everybody's going through this to some level. There's a lot of people out there who think that who believe that the jab is really good for them, and if you can really go with that belief, then then it's going to be better than going in and having a jab believing that this is terrible for you. It's a bit like chemotherapy. I want to link it back to chemotherapy. Chemotherapy can absolutely work, but you've really got to go into that with a very clear mind and visualization of, yes, this is amazing. If you go into having chemotherapy going, oh my God, this is a poison and it's going to kill me, then then potentially we have the ability to create our future. That's what I want to say. And I didn't really want to make this talk all about the jab, but it's
such a big,
so relevant right now,
present energy of conflict. Yes. Right.
It is. So as a baby, so there'll be some people who never had that feeling of absolute trust of a parent. So I've always been a little bit on guard. I'm not going to let my guard down. I'm going to, have to try and protect myself. Be very, what's the word? Independent. That's my word. I'm very independent.
Guarded and wary.
Yeah. You have to work really hard to gain my trust, sort of thing. But then once you start lowering those those barriers down, it can then, if that person stays, they do, or they act, and they soothe you or help you understand about how things are in the world, then you continue to build that trust and you become independent. But I think everybody right now is starting to question everything, and it's like, where do I turn now? Take that back to being a newborn baby. It's like you really, it's like going back to the beginning, and this is like, they talk about this as being the birth of a new world sort of thing. We are all babies right now going through a birth experience, and we're trying to find who we can trust, who we feel safe with, what we feel safe with, and we're constantly trying to process information whilst also dealing with all these big energies that are coming. And Jane, we had this conversation about astrology and the astrological planets and how that influences you. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about that, with how the baby is in the womb, and then.
Yeah, that was a few weeks ago now. Lots happened since then.
Okay, well, I'll talk about that. But it's
okay. It's like when the baby is in the womb, inside the mother's body, it is protected by several layers on the outer, so that the outside world isn't coming in and doesn't have as much of an influence on the baby as it's developing. It's fully protected. It's it's shielded, much like the planet is shielded from the outer influences of space. And this is the comparison that I forget who was talking about this. It was an astrologer actually that I was having a conversation with in a coffee shop, as those barriers open up and the baby comes into the world, the influences of the energies that are present influence the energy of the baby. And this is why we have such an importance on the time of birth, the place of birth, because it's all calculated as to how strong those energies are and what kind of an influence those energies are having on this brand new person. So I'd never thought of it in those terms before. So those protective barriers from the outer, the planets, if you like, and they're influencing our energy on the planet all the time, especially the closer ones. The moon has the influence on the tides, so that would kind of follow that the baby is in a sack of water. There would be some influence there, because, you know, we feel it in our own bodies when it's coming to the full moon. And I'm certainly influenced by it being a water sign. So yeah, I'd never looked at it that way. So there are so many influences on a brand new born baby coming out into the world, you know, the bright lights, the suddenly much louder noises, the different I guess chemical kind of compounds that suddenly they're exposed to. I mean, oxygen. How would it be taking that first breath? What would that feel like? What would be the you know, not quite formed thoughts or, you know, sensations of having that first intake of oxygen? What would that feel like? How would that be? You know, you've never breathed oxygen before. These are things that we don't think about. So many influences on this completely vulnerable, completely new, fresh human being. It's just extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. And when you think right now that Earth is actually transitioning through a part of the galaxy that, you know, has so much plasmic light, so much different energy. I mean, I'm certainly feeling it. You know, my body's never had so much energy going on within it. And our bodies are having to adjust to that too. And we're having to adjust to that. So again, this is almost like it takes us back to that time when we've come from that protective water environment out into this air environment. And it's funny you should talk about taking that first breath, because I actually did some scuba diving the other day. I don't even think we've had a conversation about this, and I nearly drowned because I took in water and I swallowed the water while I was underwater, and I couldn't get the air to work in my regulator in my mouth, and I just wanted to bolt for the surface. But of course you can't do that because you end up with the bends. So my dive master was like hanging on to me going, no, breathe. And like in that moment, I'm thinking, like, I'm dying. Do you not understand? I'm dying right now because I can't breathe. My regulator's stuck. But once she got me calmed down again, that I could take the breath again. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is how a baby must feel when they've got fluid in the back of their throats and they can't breathe when they go to. And of course, we cut the umbilical cord so early on. It's like the baby has no support. It's like we're cutting off the regulator. You know, because the cord blood carries 30% of the oxygen. It's kept the baby alive all the time it's in utero, so it will keep the baby alive until the baby's airway is clear. So yeah, so that's quite another
That's
kind of
really
analogy.
That's quite extraordinary, isn't it? Yeah. You must have known that we were going to be talking about this to have that experience.
Yeah, thanks universe for nearly drowning me so I can, you know, share that. Yeah, it was quite a dramatic experience, and although because we did go up to the surface and I did go down another 2 times within that one dive, it's like once I got out the water, it's like, no, I don't want to go back in there. I'll do some snorkeling, I'll stay on top of the water, but I don't need to be under the water. So yeah, but I mean, that just reminds me of a dear lady called Jill Edwards. I don't know whether you've heard of Jill Edwards. The
name sounds familiar.
Yeah, she was a spiritual teacher. I think her book was called Living Magically or something like that. I've got my lovely friend here in Ara's on this call, so maybe she can remind me of Jill Edwards' book or books. But she asked me, because she came to one of the trainings, and she asked me if I could work with her on a birth experience. And I said to her, okay, so, you know, what... tell me about what you consciously know about your birth, which is how I usually start off. And she started to cough, like she had some fluid in her throat. And then she coughed and she coughed and she coughed and she coughed. And then she started to panic because she then couldn't breathe. So I was like
Gosh.
tapping down her back and just calming her down, and I was doing what the dive master was doing to me. Just breathe, you're okay, you're going to get through this. And it literally launched her into the memory of being a baby, where she'd come out and had fluid in her throat, and they had cut her umbilical cord, and that moment she felt like she'd been cut off from life.
Wow.
Yeah, cut off
So
from
going
life.
to our theories around, in the Metaclear technique, we place a heavy emphasis on the presence of shock in these memories, in these moments that we feel are significant. So do you feel that potentially that was a shock moment that she's carried her entire life?
Exactly.
Wow.
And sadly, she's no longer with us now, because I think she had a life, or not a lifelong, but she had a number of experiences with cancer, and eventually that's how she left the planet, bless her. But yeah, definitely she would have held that shock in her body, and in her subconscious memory, if you like, for all those years. But yeah, it's fascinating how we carry these things, and it can be something that feels like totally unrelated will trigger us into that memory, that just sets off a cycle in life, a pattern.
Wow, it's also linked, isn't it? It's the more you get into the depths of these conversations, this is why I love having these conversations, and you and I just get together and talk for hours. I wish we'd recorded more of it, because there is some absolute gold in some of those conversations, in all of them, I think. And I think it's so important to start to unpack some of these experiences and start to piece them together to really work out and come to a place where we can actually be present with it without constantly going back and re-experiencing that trauma, but be more at peace with these experiences, that they are things that we have been through. But we're now coming into such an evolutionary phase where trauma is shaking itself to the surface for all of these beautiful good reasons, so that we can be free of it, and move forward into these new times. However that is going to unfold, we can be more of the people that we're meant to be, without these shackles and bonds of these shock moments and these traumatic experiences, and coming to that understanding that those shock moments play such an important part, but that shock holding together what is inside of those experiences are equally as important to examine and start to unravel as well. And it's only through these types of conversations and working with practitioners that really understand the depths of these types of experiences and how they play in our consciousness and how it's all linked together, and our external experiences that we feel are random are completely not random. They weave their way through our timelines, our consciousness, our energy field, right back to these formative moments. I find it so extraordinarily fascinating. I really do. I could immerse myself in this for weeks.
Yes,
Well, I do.
it's absolutely fascinating. Yes, we do. So just to let people know, Jill's book, thank you, Renara, she says, stepping into conscious medicine, life is a gift and living magically. Thanks, Renara.
Beautiful.
So yeah, it's really interesting, because so many people, and this is what I'm finding time and time again, and this is no judgment about other therapies. Okay, so I just want to make that quite clear right now. But what I am experiencing is, or what I have experienced over a number of years, is that so many people have done so much therapy, and they have improved their life because of the therapy they've done, but the pattern they're looking to transform is still relevant in their life. And I'll give you an example. There was this man that I worked with years ago who has this addiction to porn. And at times of stress, that's his go-to addiction. Now, we all have our addictions. You know, mine is buying books off of Amazon. It could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be, I don't know, all sorts of different things. Yeah. So I'm always curious of what is it about that addiction? Why that addiction and not another addiction?
Yeah.
And one of the questions I asked him is, and I can't even remember how this kind of came about, but I asked him, had he been circumcised? And he had.
Of course, yes, he had. Yeah.
So the procedure that they do in America and other countries, they basically strap the baby down, very conscious, no pain relief, and a week-old baby, and they do various different things and cut off the foreskin, basically. So can you, I'm going to say, can you imagine being that baby? Actually, don't imagine being that baby. But if you were to guess how that baby might be feeling, is like you've just had a mutilation to your sexual organ. But what the body is very cleverly does is, in time of immense pain, the body releases endorphins. So a lot of women will know about endorphins that have given birth. So as you're going through the birth process, if you're going through a gentle birth process and are not induced, if you're going through the labor process naturally, then each time you have a contraction, your body releases endorphins, and the endorphins are pain relief. And these are special get yourself out of the shit hormones. Like, you know, if a tiger's just bitten you on the leg, but you still need to run, you don't want to be feeling the immense pain in your leg. So you kind of block it out, you don't feel it. And it can almost, like, it can give you a high. And you can get addicted to these high hormones.
Yeah.
So just think about the no, or maybe not think about the kind of abuse, self-abuse that you're inflicting on yourself if you're watching pornography for days and days and days and days and days.
Yeah.
It becomes very abusive. It becomes an assault on your own body, and you're the one doing it, but you're also getting the pleasure from doing it. And it's like, you know, it gets very convoluted and twisted.
Vicious cycle to be caught in, that one, isn't it? Wow.
Yes. Yeah. So
and still trying to resolve that trauma of that experience of the surgery.
Yeah. So it may not manifest in that way. You know, I've had other guys that I've worked with who become super sensitive to the world, basically. You know, the fluorescent lights, the sound of a cooling machine in a supermarket, too many people, too much noise, and you just get more and more and more and more hypersensitive. And this man that I work with, I think he's actually mentioned in my book, is that he was, as a 7-year-old little boy, he had so many food allergies and allergies to the world. So anything that's allergy-wise means that you have this belief the world's a dangerous place. And he was strapped to the table as a 7-year-old, and the doctor and his father was holding him down as well, helping the doctor. And they were sticking needles in his back to do the allergy test. So each needle contained a different chemical to see which one he was going to react to. Now, he thought that that was the original trauma, but it's not, because when you go back to the original trauma, which was the circumcision of being a baby being struck down. Anyway, so
Yeah.
we wanted to talk about abandonment and rejection. So this is kind of going to link into that, because he felt abandoned by his parents. First of all, his mother didn't protect him from having that experience. And secondly, his father was even the one that was holding him down during the experience when he was 7 years old. Mm. So there was so much.
The very people he has to place his trust in the most in the world, yes, betrayed.
Yeah, are the ones that he in his mind has linked to that actual abuse. So of course, you know, he has trouble forming relationships, and you know, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of rage, especially at women, and da 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 da. So, you know, it's pretty big.
Yeah. So
where do we go from there?
Well, I find it all so interesting that, I mean, it's tragic. You know, people go through some tragic experiences in life because of these things. And these core beliefs are so fundamental to people's lives that they operate, all of their behaviors and everything comes from these beliefs. They quite often don't realize that they are beliefs. They are a way of operating, and they are not questioned. They are taken to be absolute truth. I am, or the world is, fill in the blank, and there's no capacity to even question it much of the time. So it's not until behaviors and things get so overwhelming that it's not able to be coped with and life's starting to fall apart that any of this starts to be unpicked and questioned. Yeah. So what do you think could be the clues of the way that people might start to kind of get an inkling that there's something here that is the way that I operate, something that I have accepted and not questioned, that is not serving me, that might be lodged in there that I could possibly start to look at? What do you think are the clues that people can start to maybe feel into?
Yes, so the biggest clue is how you respond when you're feeling under pressure. Mm-hmm. So how you deal with pressure and stress. So I'll give you an example. When I was writing my book, I would do the usual procrastination first, play on Facebook, when I'd sit down to write. So I allow myself kind of about 2 hours a day to write. So I'd sit on Facebook and waste half an hour on Facebook. And then the next half an hour, I'd sit down and write feverishly, really getting into what I'm doing. Then all of a sudden, I'd get this wave of tiredness come over me. And it's like, oh, then I've just got to go to sleep. What's happening? And then I'll wake up, and then I try and get back into it, and it'll be slow going. But I would write a little bit more, and then my 2 hours was up, and then, you know, I'd go off and do something else. And I was noticing that there was a pattern. And I was also becoming very consciously aware of my thought process. So to begin with, you know, I was just totally focused and clear, and then the thoughts was coming in. And I wrote about this in my book, you know, your fears about, you know, how to find out what's going on within your mind. So I wrote down my fears. My fears about writing my book is that nobody was going to read it. It was going to be a failure. The fears about writing my book is that everybody was going to read it, and everybody was going to contact me, and I'd be overwhelmed with people. The fears about writing my book is that I was going to get some of the information wrong, and then I'd be rejected and be attacked. Anyway, so all of that stuff was coming in, and as soon as I got to that point where I was overwhelmed with these negative thoughts, that's when I wanted to black out and go to sleep and just shut the world out.
Yeah.
The same would happen with my father. I would go and see my father in a nursing home. He had dementia. You know, he did his journey over 11 years, so I had a lot of time to explore this in my own belief. Whenever I came home, on the drive home from the nursing home, I just, in the car, I would just like imagine just either pulling up my hood over my face, or imagine just pulling up the covers and just going to sleep, just shutting down, wanting to shut down. And it's like, what's going on here? And then when I was writing my book, I asked my mum, tell me about my birth experience. And she said, oh, yeah. She said, yeah, you know, the labour started relatively easy. Your dad drove me to the hospital. Dad had to go because he wasn't allowed to stay. And then the midwife said, oh, baby's coming really fast. We're worried you're going to tear. Have some Ptsd and we'll slow down the labour. So Ptsd is a narcotic drug. So I get hit with this Petsodin as a baby. Mum goes to sleep because she can't tolerate drugs in any shape or form, alcohol, whatever it is. It just shuts her down. So I, as a baby, coming down the birth canal, all keen to get the hell out of there. And then the next minute, I'm feeling the effects of this narcotic drug, and I probably end up going to sleep as well. And that was playing out in my birth. So how another example, I was talking to a guy the other day, and he nearly died during his birth experience, and because of the near-death experience he had, he ended up in an incubator for 3 whole months. Now, he doesn't know much details about it, but can you imagine what level that must, he wasn't premature, right? So can you imagine what must have happened for him to be in an incubator for 3 months?
Wow.
So for him, I would say, but I don't know, I'm not an expert as in being able to diagnose people, but I would guess that he's probably got his borderline PTSD. And what he does is when life gets too tough, he goes into his house, he shuts the door, and he doesn't talk to anybody. And when I was speaking to him, he'd just come out of a 3-month cycle of shutting himself away from people.
Oh.
So what he does is when things get too stressful and too much for him, he goes back into his incubator for 3 months.
Wow.
But
moly.
He's then in conflict because he feels abandoned by people.
He needs acceptance and love.
And he's feeling rejected. He's feeling safe, but he's also feeling alone. He's feeling safe and he's feeling alone. Like, can you again try not to imagine, but imagine how many medical procedures that young baby must have had. What must have been done to him every time somebody came to his incubator? Probably would have done something painful to him. Removed a needle, put a needle in, catheter, whatever they did to him.
Yeah, so human contact then becomes associated with pain.
Yeah. Yeah, and he has trouble forming relationships because he didn't get to practice that really in the first 3 months of his life, because there'd be different nurses coming and going, and mum would be coming and going. So, you know, so in answer to your question is look at the patterns in your life, look at how you deal with trauma. How resilient are you?
I'm similar to you. I get overwhelmingly tired and just check out.
Yeah. So was yours a long labour, or was there drugs involved in your labour, do you know?
I don't know. From what I've been told, I mean, I'm the firstborn, so I think there was probably a lot of fear. I think mum did have some drugs. And there was my parents were very, very young. They were like 18 and 19. So, you know, I have a daughter that is, you know, well, she's 20 now. I couldn't imagine being a parent at that age. Jeez. So I imagine that there was a lot of fear and a lot of uncertainty and so I don't know, to be honest. I'll have to actually investigate that one a bit more. Yeah.
So in those moments, so one of the things we were going to talk about, or I wanted to talk about, to do with abandonment and rejection. If, for instance, when we're in utero and mum finds out that she's pregnant and it's not a planned pregnancy, then
which was me.
Yeah. So then mum goes through that thought process. Some mothers are just go, oh, well, you know, it's happened, jolly good. And other mothers go, oh my God, how am I going to cope? You know, am I going to be a parent? If you can hear running water, it's because my plants are being watered right now.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So, yeah. So if mum discovers that she's pregnant and has thoughts of, oh God, how, you know, this is not planned, I'm not in a good relationship, whatever the reason is, then for that baby in that moment, that is a feeling of like, I'm not wanted and the world's a dangerous place. And in that moment, you're feeling the energy of rejection. I'm not good enough, I'm not wanted. And potentially this could be a life-threatening situation. So that ramps up the survival responses even more. So, you know, people can go into rejection and don't even know why they're doing it. Chapter 1, as I call her, Caroline, who is chapter 1 in my book, her birth story was, you know, her mum had a lot of fear giving birth to her. When she was born, she was with her mum, but then she developed yellow jaundice. So then she had to stay under the whatever light it is.
The light,
the jaundice babies in. Mum would go home at night, to be with her older brother, and then mum would come back the next day. She would express enough milk during the night for the nurses to feed her. And this unfolded during the first session that I did with the birth work. And she realized that was the point where she was feeling rejected, where she was feeling abandoned and unloved. And how that played out in her life is that every time her husband went away for work, she would want to she'd get angry and she'd always incite an argument with him. And do you know, she didn't even put 2 and 2 together for that until after it stopped happening. After we did the session, she realized that, oh, I'm now no longer getting angry with him because he's going away from me at work, because what we did is we healed the trigger, the original trigger. We helped our baby self understand why mum had to go home and that it wasn't personal about her, and, you know, and we brought her in some safety and some comfort so she wouldn't feel alone and she wouldn't feel abandoned. And
and things unfold in life after you've done such deep work so naturally that it's like not until kind of a little bit later on and you go, hang on, I don't do that anymore.
Oh, and why was I doing that? Oh yes, it was because my mum used to abandon me every day in hospital, and I felt rejected as she went away. And I feel the same way about my husband, even though I know he's coming back. As probably as a baby, she didn't know her mother was coming back, because we don't have that ability to think in time as we're a baby. Everything in for the baby is in the moment. So that's also,
and even up to the age of 6 or 7, we don't have that ability to reason and question and work things out for ourselves. We just accept whatever we perceive in our environment to be true, and the right way of doing things. If we're observing behavior every day, we assume that's how people behave, and we we pick up those habits as well.
You know, that very much links into the work with the relationships. You know, I'm just thinking about the work that you do with women who've experienced domestic violence. If you grow up in a family where is the norm, you believe that is the way it is.
That's right. and you
then
seek it
end up
out
in
as your comfort. Yeah, unconsciously, of course. But it's something that's familiar. It's a familiar way of being. Yeah.
And this is what we assign to love. Love is painful.
Exactly.
This is how love is. This is how relationships are. So.
Yep. Which is why I rejected the lovely boyfriends that I had early on. Because it didn't feel right. It didn't feel normal.
Normal. Yeah, so anybody who deeply cared about you is like, oh, you're not safe. Don't recognize that feeling. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I wonder how many of us.
I look back on that now and I go, oh my God. Those poor guys. They were lovely. Anyway. So, where are we going to go from here? What do you feel are the most important things that people can be doing now? Because so many people must be, struggling with perhaps unfamiliar emotions that are surfacing, that have been, not necessarily triggered at all, ever, really, maybe, in terms of these real deep senses of vulnerability, these baby-like responses to, coming into a new world. So shall we come up with maybe some suggestions that people can firstly start to recognize perhaps this is what it's linking back to, and things are not completely out of control. We can come back into our bodies and start to sense these things and understand these things, and start to work with them and help to self-soothe. That's a term from my old early motherhood days.
Teach your baby to self-soothe.
Oh, goodness me. I sat on the stairs and cried my eyes out when I told her. Oh, anyway, that's another one.
Another trigger. So, yes, babies can't self-soothe. Babies don't know how to self-soothe, and that's why they rely so much on their parents to do that for them. It's the parents' job to soothe the baby, not the baby's job to soothe itself. But we are no longer babies, so now we are adults and older children that we can
have that.
We'll have that. Yeah. So the first thing I would like to recommend people do is to go further down this Facebook page and watch the video on the art of self-inquiry.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because we have covered quite a bit in there, haven't we? Yeah.
We have. And what again, an example that happened today in my Pilates classes, one of the ladies in the class, we were doing quite vigorous workout, more so than we normally do. Our Pilates teacher must have had her 2 Weetabix when she got up this morning and decided she was going to torture us. And the lady, she got very, very dizzy and had to sit down, and then she wanted to vomit. And I knew exactly where she was, because that happens to me in cardio. When I first started doing the cardio circuit training, whenever I raised my blood pressure or my heart rate, I would get very, very dizzy and feel very, very strange. And then it's like, I think it's all to do with the vagus nerve. And then I'd want to throw up. And then I would get emotional. And she did as well. She's going, I don't understand why I got emotional. And at that point, she was getting emotional. I knew exactly where she was at. So I literally just put my hand on her back and just ran my hand down her back, and I literally just said to her, this is your vagus nerve, right? Because you've raised your heart rate in a way that it's not used to having to work, then it's your vagus nerve response. I said, and it will pass. You will start to feel better very quickly. And I was just like, again, just soothing her. I was just rubbing down her back, and she almost instantly started to feel better. And 2 things were happening there. First of all, she understood. I was giving her a reason why she was feeling like that. I was also explaining to her that I totally understood how she was feeling, because I've experienced it, and it's okay to be crying at this point. This is normal. And then I was soothing her nervous system, if you like, by rubbing her back. So you think about what a mother normally does to a baby. You know, when you're holding a baby, you're holding them here, you know, in the lower part of the body and the upper part of the body. And, you know, if you're laying with them on the chest, you do like to just soothe them.
Yeah, I used to just pat gently. Yeah.
So physical contact. So if you're on your own and you don't have somebody to pat your back, then, you know, you can hug yourself.
Is that, what do you call that? What's it called? Havening? Is it havening?
Havening, I think. Yeah.
I think it's havening. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I've until recently, when I've started to have vagus nerve responses, I've never truly understood them. And I still wouldn't say I fully understand it, but I'm just getting to know it better now. So to be able to soothe your nervous system, breathing, the breath is another really good way. Of course, tapping as well, and you can touch and breathe. As you know, you can just touch one of the points, the EFT points, and breathing. But the key things is to understand why this is happening, and to be able to use the art of self-inquiry, or to follow the energy back down your timeline, and like, you know, what's this triggering in me right now?
I love that question. How old do I feel right now?
Yeah, how old do I feel right now?
Yeah.
You know, and so many people I work with, they just want to go like this. Like when something's happening, they want to go like this. So this will give you the indication that it's fetal position. So they call it fetal position for a reason. It's like, yes, it is a protection because you're protecting your vital organs. But when you feel yourself wanting to curl in, then this is potentially in utero stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is taking you back to in utero stuff. I just want to just check in here.
We got some comments.
We got some comments. Yeah. Okay. Let me just see if I can see all the comments, because I'm just Steph and Renara.
Thank you everyone for being here with us, by the way. We haven't stopped and taken a breath to actually say hi to anyone.
No, I know.
This is how it is with us.
Once we get started, nobody else can get a word in edgeways. So Renara, bless her, is my very good friend, and I know she won't mind me sharing this. She said, mine is I'm not welcome. Shock for her birth mother when she discovered she was pregnant as well. And I think if you listen to the talk that we did in the Art of Self-Inquiry, there's normally other layers, like a convincer that this is true. So Renara quite openly talks about the fact that she was adopted as well. So there may be something around, you know, being adopted, not feeling welcome, what went on in her family life as a child, and not feeling fully accepted. I don't know how to get to all of the comments. It won't open up for me. So I know, Steph, who used to be a GP, said, yes, such awful parenting advice. We won't go into here about the letting your baby cry it out, but that's pretty. Yeah, I can't get to the rest of it, but I know there were some other comments there. So. Yeah, there's a lot going on that we have to share between us, a lot of knowledge that we have, and we can't often just share with each other.
I know, and I love our conversations. At least 2 or 3 times a week where we're here spinning the yarns, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
I'm just absolutely, you know, fascinated by the observations that I'm constantly having around the experience that I'm having personally in my responses, and what's actually and those micro experiences and things that are relevant to me in the present moment and in my past, and the things that are actually playing out on this grand scale in the world at the moment.
Sorry, I'm trying to get to the questions on my phone and it's talking. Do comments? No, I can't.
past.
Okay, that doesn't work.
I can hear myself. Oh God.
Trauma.
What was I saying? Yeah, those macro experiences that
Yeah.
I'm seeing such strong comparisons of I mean, you can call it what you want, governments and authorities and these figures of power are very, very similar behaviors to what it is like to be in an abusive relationship. So we have the authorities and powers that be, and all of, you know, the big media corporations, you know, the censorship and everything that's happening is very, very similar dynamic to narcissistic abuse within a intimate relationship on just that grander scale. And I'm absolutely fascinated by it. I mean, it's tragic and it's wrong on every level. But I find it so fascinating. I really do. And what it comes down to is personal power. We stepping into our personal power, feeling comfortable and grounded in ourselves, you know, taking back our own authority, to be who we are and stand up and speak our truth, set those boundaries. And this is the work that I do, you know, in my workshops and retreats, coming back to that self-care and that sense of self-value. Where is your sense of self-value? You know, this is a big fundamental part of what we work with. What are your beliefs about self-care? Are you even allowed to self-care? Do you feel worthy of caring for yourself? Do you feel obligated to put yourself last? There's so many layers of that even. So yeah, I'm absolutely fascinated by how this is all just a reflection, really, of where we're at as who we are.
And do you feel abandoned by the government, who you were hoping was going to take care of you in this time?
Coming back to that surrogate parent again, like we talked about that in the last video on the art of self-inquiry, that surrogate parent figure in the government that has taken so much control over our lives that, you know, we are given permission to do things and live our lives, you know, by this overarching authority figure. I think we're grown up enough now to actually take responsibility for ourselves. So I think we're getting to that stage now where I think well, I can only speak for myself really, but I certainly feel it's time to stop relying on that parent figure to provide everything that we need and actually get out there and make our own way in the world.
Yeah, definitely. So the new human design, or I keep saying new human design, new human guide workshop, we put that back to start on the 22nd of April because so many people are busy throughout March. So if anybody wants to join
March
us,
seems to be the time when everything's happening. It was
all too busy, too much going on. So if anybody wants to join us, we're starting on the 22nd of April. We'll pop a link in the comment box here. But basically, we're going to be going through so much more of this, but we're going to be helping people to become even more empowered and taking care of self.
Yeah, we've got so much to share. It's 12 weeks, so each of those weeks is a different module with a different subject that we're going to go in depth with. And also work through some practical processes as well. We're not just kind of talking about, you know, things that we want to bring up or, you know, bring awareness to, which is all well and good in and of itself, but we're actually getting into the work to start shifting this energy. It's, you know, the whole purpose of this program is to start empowering people to really uncover some of this stuff. There's a lot of this stuff that we've taken to be our truths questioned, and start to shift some of these real deep beliefs, and shifting perceptions, and looking at things in a different way, a more supportive way, a more helpful way, a more nurturing way, and really coming back into who we are as human beings. Yeah. I'm excited.
Oh, me too. And this time next week, we'll do another Facebook Live as well. So if anybody has a topic that you would like us to rift about, then we'll be more than happy to share our knowledge on any topic that, or nearly any topic that you guys would like us to talk about. Yeah, as long as we know about it, we're happy to talk about it.
And kudos to you, Sharon, because we had a bit of a chat before we began tonight, and we knew we were going to sort of start touching on the subjects of, you know, rejection and abandonment, but Sharon didn't know what questions I was actually going to be asking. So, so yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I had to dig a bit deep there and just see what was really going on for me, which is a really good question actually to get me to.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, it's sometimes the questions can seem a little maybe confronting, but they're the questions that are, you know, I'm always very mindful that I bring love to all of my inquiries. You know, the reason I may ask a question in a particular way is because I want to nurture someone into that self-inquiry, so that it's bringing the, you know, the best out of them, in order to delve into that stuff that's not the best, that, you know, to start, you know, to transform it. So everything is delivered with love and complete gratitude for anybody who shows up in these spaces, because you know, it can be a challenge. But always remember, when you're asked these questions, the only thing you're facing is yourself.
And I think we have a new question for our outer self-inquiry. How do you respond to stress?
Yes, I shall write that one down.
Yeah, see, that came about organically.
Your behaviors. Yes, it did.
You know, because I've never really stopped to, you know, think about that question before.
Yeah, it is true.
You know, how do you know really you've got birth trauma? It's like, well, it shows up most when you're under stress, or, you know, going through something that's putting a lot of pressure on you.
Yeah. I remember, if I've got time for a very quick short story, I remember when I was still in my marriage, when I was stressed and feeling like I had no control over my environment and my situation. You know, I was feeling completely overwhelmed and overpowered. I would clean the house. My house was spotless. You could eat off the floors. And because that was the only way that I had a sense that I was actually in control and able to do something. So that was what I did. And that was a pattern that I noticed years later, when I felt safe in a new environment after I'd left. I was like, yeah, I can't be bothered doing the cleaning today. I'm just not feeling it. But it was because I felt safe that my cleaning compulsion disappeared.
Yeah, having to work off that nervous energy.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Thank you so much for interviewing me and dragging out of me what I didn't know. And we hope that everybody has enjoyed our
Hope there's been a little enlightening, and you're able to perhaps look into some of those things in yourself, and have a little bit of that self-inquiry.
Yes.
And
exactly.
nurture yourself through it.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
Contact
unfortunately,
us as well if there's been anything that's been a little bit triggering in any of that. You know, feel free to get in touch and talk it over.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've just realised I forgot to press the record button, so we can't upload this to YouTube now. But it's on Facebook.
Oh
so
no!
never mind.
Oh dear.
Well, note to self for next time. Alrighty, everybody. Have a good day or evening, depending on where you are in the world. Jane, thank you very much, and I'll see you the same time, same place next week, next Thursday,
Yes.
and we will, we'll do this all again and see what
we'll continue. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right,
Thank
everybody.
you.